Sundays in the year that you really don't have a lot of choice of kind of the theme to preach. And yet you don't want it to be same old, same old. You know, I don't want to get up here and say, now what are your New Year's resolutions? Because I know yours are about like mine. They're the same as last year, just with a new date on them. Except I've really marked off a few on the bottom because they've been there so long, I know I'm not going to do it. So we may as well forget that. Plus some of them I've just got too old to do anyway. So it's not a problem anymore. But really, in looking toward a new year, the truth of the matter is it's another day. For some of us, it might be very significant maybe to start a new year. For those of us who've been around for a little while, we realize we've been here before several times. And we know that what is to come, we have little to do with. We have, yes, some responsibilities, and there are things that we should take very seriously, but not any more this week than any week of our lives. We should always be searching our heart and looking at our lives and adjusting those things that need adjusting in our lives. But what it really does, it gives us a moment of reminder. A reminder that we can maybe just for a moment just stop and just look and do a little research in our own hearts, in our own minds, in our own lives to see if maybe there's just something that we can address in our lives. I was talking to Evan, and she read a book within the last couple of years, I guess, about things in our lives that we do that are the last time we do them. And as I was thinking about this morning, looking back over this last year, there are a few things that I did this last year that's the last time I'll do that. I'll never forget the day I got a phone call from my dad. And he sounded a little disheveled, and basically his first line was, "That's the last time I'll do that." And I said, "Well, what did you do?" Well, Dad was in his mid to late 70s. But he decided to get the extension ladder out and go up in the 40-foot oak tree in the front yard and cut off a dead limb. Well, he got to the top of the ladder and then realized he didn't like it up there. And it was a different place than he had ever been before. And he said, "You know what? That limb is still there. I decided that was the last time I would do that." And I did appreciate this. To make sure he didn't lose his mind, he gave the ladder to my son. And that took care of that. Sometimes we come to those places in life that there's just some last times that we do some things, sometimes because of common sense, sometimes because of ability, sometimes because we have no choice. Life just brings us to those moments. But there are things that we get to do that we've never done before. And we had one of those years. We had the privilege of signing up for Medicare. Now, I'm going to get past this real fast. I dreaded that until Obamacare, and now I'm thrilled with it. Okay? All of us are getting the privilege of doing something for the very first time in those elements of our lives. And there are other things that just maturity may bring us the privilege of getting to do. We've got a grandson that is now old enough to have a learner's permit. If he could ever remember his billfold so he could carry it with him, he is learning to drive for the first time. And I have asked the family to kindly call me when he leaves the house, because I live in the same neighborhood, and I'd like to stay at home for a few minutes at least and let him get clear of the neighborhood. Yeah, I knew you'd appreciate my support. Carrie's been learning to drive this year, getting to do that for the first time. So we have these momentous occasions. I will never forget a moment that I was out on West State Street. My family, we did not live in Bristol at the time. I don't know if we were Oklahomans or Texans or whatever we were at the time. But it was in the year 1977. My grandmother had passed. My special grandmother, I was the first grandbaby boy in the family, and I was Granny's boy. And she spoiled me rotten. And I appreciate it. And she had passed. And I was standing in the visitation room out at Acre on West State Street. And I was holding in my arms a little boy by the name of Christopher Ryan. And he was less than a year old. And I was hurting in my spirit for the loss of this special one in my life. And it's one of the few times in my life that I feel the Lord spoke to me in a sentence. Not audibly, but a sentence. And it was very clear. And it was almost like the Lord pointed his finger and said, for this to happen. And he pointed to Chris. He said, this must happen. And he pointed to my grand. It's hard to accept sometimes. But it's the truth of the matter when we face these momentous moments that we're changing and moving on. This morning we had the glorious occasion of baby dedication. And it is a glorious moment. But for the cycle of life to happen, there has to be beginnings and endings. And that is just a fact, but it is true to where we must know that God never leaves us at any moment of the process. That God is with us at all times, and his grace is sufficient for every moment of our life, whether it's a new thing totally or it's the end of something in our life. He is gracious. James chapter 4 verse 13 says, pay attention to this. You're saying today or tomorrow we will go into some city and stay there for a year and conduct business and make money. You don't know what will happen tomorrow. What is life? You're a mist that is seen for a moment and then disappears. Instead, you should say, if the Lord wants us to, we will live and carry out our plans. James gets right to the point. In this brief passage, I see 3 lessons, 3 simple verbs that are worth remembering as we embark on 2014. The first of these is the word surrender. Surrender your plans and even your dreams for 2014 to the Lord. There's an old adage, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. James addresses this passage to people who seem to be doing just that. Their business plan's pretty good. They have everything figured out. They choose when they're going to leave and where they're going to go and how long they're going to stay and what business they're going to conduct and even what profit they will earn. James' reply to them is simple. How do you know what your life will be tomorrow? A while back, the Associated Press ran a story about Andre Francois Raffray. Almost 50 years ago, at the age of 47, he worked out a real estate deal with Jean Calmette, who was 90 years old. He would pay her $500 a month until her death in order to secure ownership of her apartment in Arles, France. That might seem strange to Americans, but I guess it's a common practice in Europe and especially in France. Benefits both the buyers and the retirees on a fixed income. Unfortunately for Raffray, Jean Calmette had become the world's oldest living person. He ended up paying $184,000 for an apartment that he never lived in. He predeceased her. According to the contract, his survivors had to continue the payments. until Miss Galnett died. He thought he was looking for a future and had a shrewd investment. But as it turned out, he had no idea what tomorrow would hold. Neither do we. Does this mean we should make no plans, just live by the seat of our pants? Of course not. That would be irresponsible. But it does mean that we surrender every plan to the Lord, every day to the Lord. I love the Scripture, and I tell my boys this probably to the point of ad nauseum in their lives. But the Scripture says for us to make our plans, to do the due diligence of responsibility. But it goes on to say that our steps are ordered of the Lord. Do your responsibility. Take the responsibility for your family and those that the Lord has placed in your life. But make sure that everything that you have is submitted and committed to the Lord Himself for His direction, for His wisdom and His guidance. Because this I can promise you, His plan will always be better than yours. Always. Secondly, savor. Savor every moment of 2014. Each moment is fleeting. It's pretty cold outside today, but I bet if you were to walk outside and take a deep breath, let out a hefty sigh, you'd probably, if the rain would let you, see your breath. A vapor visible just for a little while. Then it vanishes away. James isn't the only one in the Bible to mention how quickly life goes by. The psalmist wrote, "Show me, O Lord, my life's end and the number of my days. Let me know how fleeting life is." Kids in here know that the first section, the first 24 days of December lasted forever. It was so long. A lot of us in here, the whole year has gone by in just a moment. And the longer we stay around, for some reason, you'd think we get to slow down a little bit. But it just seems like we might, but the whole world doesn't. It just moves so quickly. Savor it. I hope that you had the kind of Christmas we did. We had our basement room ready and prepared for the family. And we had our 3 sons, their wives, 5 grandkids, my mom and dad. It was the first time in 3 years Mom and Dad had been able to be with us because of health situations, and we were so blessed. And we had a glorious time. And we have savored it over and over and over. My wife is the picture queen. If science allows it, sooner or later she's going to have a camera somewhere in her body that she just goes, picture. Because she takes pictures almost that often. And when she doesn't take a picture, it's because she can't get to the camera. That's about it. And now that her phone has a camera, and her tablet has a camera, and her camera has a camera, we're in trouble. But you know why? We are savorers. We savor the joys of our family, the joys of our moment, the joys of this church. We savor them. They're special to us. And then lastly, seek, chase. The one thing I think that life tends to teach us is that things don't just happen. The things that are of value happen because we seek after the good things that happen. The Scripture teaches us to seek after peace. The Scripture teaches us to seek after love. The Scripture teaches us to seek the Lord with all of our heart, where He may be found. So let this entire year be a year that you're seeking after peace, joy, love, but most of all, seek the Lord with all of your heart.